I'd like to call the committee at whole meeting for Monday, April 6, 2026 to order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Christensen?
Here.
Trustee Curtis?
Here.
Trustee Gately?
Here.
Trustee Lowry?
Here.
Trustee Nedved?
Here.
Trustee Salazar?
Here.
And Mayor Gaffino.
Here. All right, trustee comments, audience comments, trustee comments, discussion under one. Steve?
Thank you, Mayor. Item number one tonight is the annexation agreement, map and special use for a planned unit development for the Silverleaf subdivision. This is the subdivision formerly known as Deer Run off of Deer Path, and this has gone to the board as a concept plan, then to the Plan Commission, where it was originally rejected, brought back to the Committee of the Whole, where the developer proposed some changes, went back to the Plan Commission, received approvals with several conditions added, and tonight Nathan's going to walk us through the update to the annexation agreement and the planned unit development.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So just going through that history real quick, just to refresh everybody's mind. This is the parcel off of Deer Path, originally annexed as E3 lots for the Deer Run subdivision. The original approval was in '08. It had 26 lots at 12,000, 47 lots at 14,000, homes at 2,200 for a ranch, 2,600 for a two-story. Originally, Silverleaf came in with a proposal for 46 standard lots at 10,000 and 69 age-targeted lots with an average of 10,000 square foot. The house sizes were 1,600 for a ranch, 2,200 for a two-story, and 1,400 for the age-targeted. That's what went to the Plan Commission the first time and had a lot of resident opposition. They then came back with a revised proposal, which is what you all saw the last time. It dropped it to 99 lots, with the smallest lot being 9,495, average lots of 12,250. The age-targeted lots were completely removed. All the lots that back up to Tanner Trails are at least 14,000. All the lots that back up to Mirador are at least 10. And the original proposal they showed you had 1,600 square foot for a ranch and 2,200 for a two-story. They then went back to the Planning Commission, and during that time, the developer has worked with the neighbors and staff and has added some additional conditions to try to address people's concerns. So the layout, the same basic layout is still the same, 99 lots. They increased the home sizes to 1,800 for a ranch and 2,400 for a two-story. They are working with the neighbors to the south to allow some stormwater to flow off because they have ponds in the back that they were concerned would dry up. So the developer's working with them to connect those, as well as there are some field tiles out there that might be feeding them, so they're working to protect those. They agreed to some berming and plantings along lots 22 through 24, which are down along here. On lots 24 through 31, they agreed to some property line plantings and screenings. They worked a lot with the trees, so some neighbors wanted trees removed, either that were diseased or falling over the fence, and some neighbors wanted trees preserved. The developer is going to try to do both. They may not be able to in all cases, where construction is happening, some trees may have to be removed. They're going to try to preserve as many as they can. They also agreed that lots 17 through 23, which are along here, they'll keep the 40-foot rear yard setback, so to keep a little bit more space between the houses. And then finally, with staff, they worked on the routing of the bike path, which is connected at Bauer now, to be routed around to the front entrance, and the design guidelines included in both the PUD and agreement. In your packet, it was a very thick packet. It has the full draft of the annexation agreement with all the exhibits. So if you have any questions on that or any questions of the developer, they're here to answer one last time. If everybody's good, it would go to the next meeting for final votes. Come on up, Jim.
Good evening, everybody. As Nathan said, he summarized pretty well. I'm not going to run you through the whole presentation again. The only other thing I'd point out is there's a couple of letters of support in there. A couple of letters of support that are in there that we've gotten some of the additional neighbors that we've worked with. So we asked them to just kind of summarize what we've worked with them on that Nathan kind of touched on, but you can read their own words from their mouths. And other than that, unless you guys have any questions, happy to answer.
All right, Nathan, can you go over or just touch on if Silverthorne would go out of business and somebody decides to come in and, like back years ago when they built an 800 square foot
Sure. So,
box or whatever in there, so that this wouldn't happen that way this time?
Right, so we're amending the annexation agreement, we're also amending the PUD, and we're including the design guidelines and, the lot sizes and everything in both documents. So even if the annexation agreement expires, the PUD would still be in place and it would still have those requirements.
So that type of house, the houses they're presenting here, that would be?
Correct. So
Okay.
if they went out of business and somebody else wanted to, do something different,
Yeah.
they would have to come back and get approval.
Okay. Anybody else?
Good.
Fine.
Yep, no, good. I think it's, nice improvement, and I was glad you're able to work with the residents, and it seemed like they were somewhat satisfied with the results, and it'd be a great addition to our village, so.
Great,
Yep,
thanks.
thanks. Joe Krantz, you want to speak now? Just state your name and address.
Bill Krantz, 920 Bennett. When this was originally presented, the house sizes were 1,400 square foot, not 1,600. That was in the December 2nd planning meeting. So they were smaller yet. And then in the last meeting we had here, he agreed to a 2,000 square foot minimum for the houses. And then all of a sudden, when we went to planning, it changed. I'd like to see the 2,000 square foot put back in place.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? All right, seeing none, we're going to go to item 2. Water rate study.
Thank you, Mayor. Jason's going to run the PowerPoint, so we're just switching over. Okay, tonight in front of you, you have a water rate study. This is the culmination of a large-scale 2-year study that was done by our engineering consultants at EEI, which did a master waterworks system plan. The water rates was brought back at the very end because until everything is finalized in the plan, you don't know exactly what infrastructure needs you have for the future, what your water source will be, what the current status of the water quality and water source is, and whether that has to change. Once all of that finishes, then the last step is to set your rates or at least talk about the cost of everything going forward. Tonight, in addition to Public Works Director Brian Richter, I have Brandon Tonarelli, who is our Assistant Public Works Director and Village Engineer, who has been instrumental in the EI study to help with any engineering technical questions that you may have. And of course, I have our Water Superintendent, Adam Hake, who spends his days and nights watching our water system. So he is the person with any operational questions you may have. That being said, we'll go to Jason's ahead. Nice job. All right, so a little bit summary of the master plan here. The key components you see in front of you is the sustainable water source assessment. That is because we are in deep well aquifer. That is to assess that there is still water in the deep wells decades to come, which they have concluded that we will have sustained water for at least the next 25 years or so, and then to be continually reassessed. I want to touch on that quickly because other towns, as you know, are switching. Some are switching to Lake Michigan water. What you're seeing is, depending on where you are in the aquifer, people are seeing different replenishment rates, and they're looking at whether or not their area is sustainable for the future. Some towns have taken the option of going to Lake Michigan water. EEI has advised us that our water system is sustainable for a significant amount of time, basically the amount of time that we'll be reassessing it again in a few decades. That being said, the water supply and treatment, that is the water supply itself, the wells, the treatment plant, everything that we use to produce and clean the water that is sent to the residents. The alternate supply portion is looking at other areas other than deep water aquifers. This would be shallow aquifers, the city of Aurora's water system, Lake Michigan water, things like that. And then the development of a capital plan, so assessing all those needs and what the costs will be for the future. And of course, tonight, the water rate portion. Basically, the village board has already reviewed several aspects of the water study. Tonight, you're looking at what the major infrastructure needs will be. Some are required by the IPA, some are absolutely necessary to keep our water system functioning properly. And then the big thing, and I give Jason a lot of credit for this, is we obviously know nobody wants water rates to go up, but sometimes with the amount of money that we're talking here, they will have to go up to meet those needs. What we tried to do the best we could was give the board options of framework. So tonight you're going to review 5 different frameworks with actual numbers that show what the effect would be on an average homeowner's bill. Now, that being said, the goal was to set some water rate structure the night that we approved the budget, which would be the first meeting in May. We purposely brought it to tonight's meeting so that if the board didn't want to hone in on the exact number, but you like a specific framework, we can always come back on the 20th and work within that framework to show you some additional funding options within that framework itself. So right here, I'm just going to do a very quick overview, just to remind everybody of our system. It's hard to see, I'm sure, with all the things marked on there, but our water system is comprised of 3 primary components: our wells, our treatment plants, and our towers. We have 6 deep water wells, 3 on the east side of the river, 3 on the west side of the river. We have 2 treatment plants that also remove radium from the water. 1 treatment plant is on the west side, 1 treatment plant is on the east side. One of the limitations we have to our current system is at no time can we pump all 3 wells on each side to that treatment plant. So the west treatment plant, for example, has 3 wells dedicated to it, but can only take the capacity of 2 at a time. That does come into effect when we do have shortages or well problems. Then we have 2 towers that are active. We have our Automall tower, which is 1 million gallons, that is over by Woodman's. And then we have on the east side by our Public Works facility, we have a 500,000 gallon tower. We are currently building a 1.25 million gallon tower in the middle of town near the West Treatment Plant over by Goodwin Elementary School. That tower will be operational hopefully this fall. As part of the study, we just went over the water. Just wanted to briefly touch those numbers. Were not even finalized numbers. They were probably likely to go up, but just to look at the alternatives, when the board was going through whether or not to stay on our deep water aquifers, those numbers you see there are just the initial estimates to make connections to make those systems actually viable to the village, meaning Lake Michigan, for instance, if it's over $100 million, that's to bring the water here, have all the infrastructure in place, but that does not include any of the infrastructure that we will need for our own system. On top of that, water main replacements, lead service line replacements, all of that would be in addition to those numbers. With that, Jason, next slide. So the water study basically shows this is what our water system will look like for the next 25 years. Based on the EEI's calculations, the big number at the bottom is $121 to $141 million worth of improvements in the next 25 years. When the staff saw that, we said there's a couple things. One, it doesn't account for the potential of grants or funding opportunities that appear. Sometimes the IPA will have loan forgiveness or low interest loans. None of that is necessarily accounted for. This is worst case scenario if everything on that list was moved forward at our normal funding mechanisms. That's the amount of money it would take. If you see in blue, we have 2 decisions that we need to finalize with the village board regarding our treatment options as well as our pressure zone on the east side. And then in red, you see that those are IEPA required. So the corrosion control study is a study that basically determines how much chemical you need to put in your water to keep the lead or any other chemical casings in the line from leaching into the water system in homes that are susceptible to that, such as places that have lead lines. The irony of that is we are removing all the lead lines in town from the public side and the private side, but yet the corrosion control study will still need to go on in perpetuity, at least for now. Next slide, please. So I'm leading into our first decision topic for the night for the board. This is our existing water treatment plants. As I alluded to earlier, we remove the radium per IEPA requirements through our water system at these treatment plants. We currently use hydrous manganese oxide, or HMO, is the filtration system that we use. The other semi-standard method that towns use around here is called cation exchange. People basically know that as salt softening, so you salt, it actually softens the water and removes the radium. We kind of brought that up with the board a while back. We're going to bring it back up tonight. The other thing to do is the treatment plants are expensive. They're hitting the end of life. They're between roughly 20 and 25 years old already. And some of the things are starting to come to the end of life cycle. So regardless of whether we expand them, we will need to basically flip over the systems within them to make them new so that they still function properly. The other thing in here too is, as part of our treatment plant upgrades, we are looking to expand the treatment plant's capabilities and capacity. The one thing that was very smart when they designed the buildings 20 to 25 years ago was they put enough room in the buildings to add radium removal system and filtration. That allows us, if we want, to have access to all three of our wells at each treatment plant. Why that is important, as the board knows from my emails, we have 6 active wells. At one point last week, we were down to 2. And things happen randomly. Most of the time, we have 5 or 6 running. Between, things happening with the shaft, 2 of our VFDs failed that run the electric to the well itself. These things pop up randomly. Adam gets calls and alarms in the middle of the night. He's waking up and he's trying to fix them. So you always want redundancy in the water system. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam. When we left the board the last time, we talked about salt and we talked about softening water. It removes the radium, just like HMO does. It's slightly more expensive if you look at in the grand scheme of the $100 million or so of projects. It's $14 million roughly to upgrade our treatment plants using cation exchange versus $12.5 million for manganese oxide. After we discussed it with the board, and the board was not 100% one way or another, but there was some feelings on, it looked like some had really pushed towards cation exchange. Adam had some thoughts on the process and wanted to make sure the board knows operationally what that means for us.
Yeah, so currently the treatment technology we use, we have very few taste and odor complaints. It's usually somebody has a dry sink trap or something like that in their house. They're getting some sewer gases, so it's generally pretty easy for us to help people understand what's going on at their home. The ion exchange softening process does affect some of the chemicals that are already in the water or that are naturally there. One of them being ammonia in the raw water. Currently we combine that with the disinfection that we do to make a certain type of chlorine residual in the system that has very low odor. When you go to ion exchange softening, it can actually concentrate more of that ammonia chemical in the treatment vessels and then release it towards the end of the treatment cycle, and it can create fluctuations in chlorine residuals and cause some, more noxious tastes and odors for people. That would be a concern like I would have. We don't have all of the infrastructure in place to kind of smooth that out and blend that. Like a large clear well that we would pump into, then let it mellow out and pump out of would definitely help that kind of a thing, but that would come at a pretty large expense to do. Just in general, some of the other items, we're going to be applying chemicals in either situation. That's just kind of what we have to do. With HMO, we do make it on site and then treat it to remove the radium. It's basically just a big filter. The ion exchange is just like your home water softener. It just exchanges the radium ions for salt that's on the filter media. And it does end up increasing sodium levels in the finished drinking water for people, so that can be a concern for some. There are more capital costs involved with ion exchange softening as well.
I think the other big thing was, and it goes back to 20 years ago when the treatment plants were built, the decision then to soften also came down to personal preference of, and I think I wasn't around here that long ago, but I can tell you it from what I've heard over the years from the staff, part of that was people who don't have softened water have the choice to soften their water through a softener. If you don't want softened water, you don't have to have softened water. With cation exchange, everybody gets softened water. So that's just something to remind the board. And then anyone with a softener essentially would probably either have to just turn it off and let it.
Yeah, we would recommend basically abandoning that just because you don't want to over soften your water at home. In the ion exchange process, like if we had one at the water treatment plant, we would actually add raw water back to what water has gone through the softener because you have to leave with a certain amount of hardness in your water. Otherwise, it would be super corrosive. Likely, we would probably have to add another chemical for certain for corrosion control. Like there would be no way we would get around that, and we may have to do pH adjustment as well with another chemical. Those things would all be determined by the corrosion control study. Ion exchange softening would also require us to do that extra part of the corrosion control study that Steve mentioned already, and I think that was around $250,000 in additional costs to do that portion.
So the lucky thing for us is that Adam, in a former life in another community, he worked in a community that used cation exchange, so he has experience with both.
Yeah, it's a really nice process, and it makes, soft water. Everybody likes that. There are different things that you have to think of. The salt has to be on a regular delivery schedule. It comes, actually, we're dependent on the river. So I have experienced problems where the river's frozen, and you're like, oh, I hope the salt gets here because it's very, dependent on that.
So at this point, I think we're looking for feedback from the board, just basically on whether or not you would like to continue using the HMO process we currently use, or if you would like to soften the water. And that's really what it comes down to, is whether you want the water softened or not.
So the choice is pretty clear. We can't have ammonia smelling in our water systems. I mean, it's like a poison. So, and look at all the cons and the softened water. So I say we stay with the existing treatment. I mean, we don't really have much of an option.
Yeah, I agree. And then, when we're looking at keeping water prices down, and I'm looking at the higher operational costs for the softened water, that's not going to help us with our goal.
So that's how I think.
Anybody else? Dad?
Yeah, it looks like the cons are way more on the right side there.
One of the benefits about remaining with the existing treatment technology would be for construction, it might be actually a little easier, to have the same type of treatment process going, where if you had one facility producing a softened water and the other one was not, we run the risk of having some kind of corrosion issue in the system when we don't want that. So,
And that's a valid point, because whenever any of these upgrades are done, especially at the treatment plants themselves, we'll essentially have to shut a treatment plant down and operate with one treatment plant for a short period of time and then flip over to the other one. So there would be a chance that you would be doing.
To me,
different.
why create a problem when there isn't one? So the water tastes great, I think, and it is hard, I guess. How is our hardness? Was that like a 17?
it's like 16 grains per gallon.
I mean, is that pretty average?
It's pretty normal for this part of the region.
Yeah. And like I said, the cons just seem like way too much to deal with, so.
Yeah.
Last fall I was for the cation, but we didn't have it put out this way. I don't think we didn't have the list of pros and cons. I hate the calcification, makes your coffee pots, die after 3 months, and then your water faucets and all of that, but I don't guess that probably, justifies going to all these other things and potential problems. So as much as I'd like soft water, I guess, I would go for the existing.
Like, it's up to the resident. They can get their own system and.
That's true. No, they can do it that way if they want, yes.
Softener.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with the lesser amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Anything
you
else,
for
Steve, on
the-
that one?
No, that's good. So item 1 is knocked out, and now we're on to the second item for discussion and decision tonight. So as the board is aware, we've had an issue with water pressure in the northeast corner of our community. So if you look here, and this one threw me off for a loop when I first looked at it, because in this case, green is not great. Usually whenever you see any type of map, red is bad, but red is actually good on this one. So if you look at the top corner, you see blues and green dots. Basically what happens is in a normal water system, you want your peak time PSI, your pressure per square inch of your water system to be around 40 PSI. That's kind of the goal. If pressure drops down to 20, under 20, you have to issue a boil order by IEPA regulations. That area of town, and I'm going to turn it over to Adam to talk briefly about the operational issues we have, but essentially gravity works against us. The village's entire water system is based on gravity right now. So right now, all the water is, think of the town as one giant pressure zone. The water goes up to the tower, the pressure is created at the tower, and then it's dropped back into the system. That area of town has some of the highest elevations in town, so you're literally pumping uphill. So the farther you get to the corner of our town in that area, and as Brandon always says, I use the analogy, if you've ever ridden your bike in that area, you can see a giant drop from Hart Road down. So as it gets up there, the pressure drops. Well, what ends up happening is we've had a couple boil orders that haven't been caused by water main breaks or anything that would normally trigger an automatic boil order. It's been simply pressure drops in the system, and Adam can explain that real quick.
Yeah, so the community is on one pressure zone, and it's generally stable except this very narrow band on the far east side of town. The elevation just rises up so high. And if you can picture like where the water tower itself is and where the land level is, there's just not enough distance between the top of the ground and the bottom of the water tower bowl. And when things happen in this system quickly, we can get pressure drops in this area because it's all fed that one direction. Recently, we had to have that east water tower shut off for a few days for a particular type of maintenance, and we had everything operationally set to have one well running, but ComEd failure caused the well to shut off, and it just created this, very dramatic pressure drop. I mean, it's a matter of seconds, but the regulations don't matter. It's for any length of time. So we had to issue a boil order for these affected areas. Fortunately, it's like we've kind of looked at possibly looping pipes and things. It might help marginally, but it's not going to improve it enough to fix the problem. So,
And looping pipes is extremely difficult in the areas that are already built up for two reasons. It's super expensive to add all that infrastructure, and then on top of that, you're basically putting pipes in areas that already have utilities and backyards and easements. It's a massive project to do that. So I give Brandon credit. Years ago, when we first started the study, he thought it may make sense to look at the city of Batavia's water system, which is right across the street and which we have an emergency interconnect with already on Hart Road. Their PSIs are gigantic compared to ours because their tower sits at Kirk Road, way above the elevation that we're at. And so we joke around, the water basically races down from Kirk down to us. So one of the thoughts was you can create pressure in two ways. You can create your own pressure zone that typically requires a tower, pumps to now take the water from the east side treatment plant, to take the water from the treated plants up to that tower and then pump them uphill and into the tower. That process alone, which you're going to get to in a second, is over $20 million to create a pressure zone like that. What we saw with Batavia, and we've already met with the city of Batavia a couple times just to see operationally if it would work, is we can create two connection points, upgrade a little bit of the infrastructure to upsize piping and whatnot, and we think for roughly $5 million we can create an area of town, about 100 homes or so, that would actually be essentially cut from North Aurora's water supply It would still be serviced by the Village of North Aurora, all the pipes. We would still bill the residents the same, only we would be buying the water from Batavia for those houses, and they would get the benefit of the pressure from Batavia.
Steve,
yeah.
Steve, are these blue dots each individual houses, or how is
No, these are, those should be hydrants.
I think
hydrants.
they just call them nodes in the modeling software. They're just like points that they're looking at. So
that? Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're talking about providing water to the undeveloped areas. So when we do the infrastructure, can we recoup some of these costs, or can some of these costs be absorbed by the developer?
Yeah, so the second part of this, at the bottom where it says unable to service undeveloped land, the first part is as I call these issues, they're two. The first issue is making sure the residents have adequate pressure. Whether that land along Hart Road owned by Marmion and Abbey Farms develops or not, the pressure area will still exist. So the low pressure area. So the first thing is to address the low pressure. The second point to what you're getting at is future development. There has been a lot of interest from residential development that wants to go in that area. Nathan gets calls quite a bit. Marmion has sold land already off of Verdant recently to a developer. And in order to do that, to your point, Trustee Curtis, is what would normally happen in that situation is we would require the developer, especially because they would have to annex to the village, we would require them to run the pipe to the connection point at their expense. So the benefit is if we bring the water down, we get to service our residents, and it actually makes that area more developable, in which case a developer could then take that main and bring it down from Batavia. Well, from Batavia's water supply, I should say. So that area would still be on Batavia water in the future if it ever annexed to North Aurora in this scenario. With that, next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, here's the pros and cons section of Batavia water versus creating a pressure zone. I mean, the big one is the cost. Obviously, no one here wants to tell a resident that we are not providing our water to them. But at the same token, believe it or not, a section of these homes already are on Batavia sewers. They are the only section of town that is not in Fox Metro, some of these homes. And once again, it's because of gravity and just the way of that area. Bless you. So if you have any questions, Adam, do you have any other points you'd like to add out about the differences, or do you think we covered it?
I do have a question about if Batavia raises their rates, would that raise the rates for North Aurora residents?
Yeah, so here's well, not necessarily. So here's what we're thinking of doing. In our meetings with Batavia, they're very preliminary. Any agreement with Batavia requires approval by their city council, and it would require an IGA with Batavia. In our initial meetings, the first questions were, can you supply the water? And I think our daily capacity that we're requesting is between 100 and 120,000 gallons a day. And they said, yes, we can provide that water. Okay. The next step, what is the connection fee? Is there a connection fee to tap onto their system, a water impact fee, so to speak? Is there a water rate that is going to be different than North Aurora's rate? And of course, I assume at the minimum, Batavia will charge us their rate. So what we'll have to do is, in order for our residents, when we come down to that portion, when we get closer and you see an IGA in front of you, that's where we would decide how we would want to smooth those rates out in the bills. Essentially, internally, what we've said is all the people in North Aurora will see the same bill, meaning we'll still bill them at our rate and most likely eat the cost of the difference between Batavia and North Aurora's rate if there is one. This way, North Aurora residents are still paying the same rates for North Aurora.
Do we know what that is?
Batavia's rates?
Yeah.
No, because Batavia's rates, they're going through the same water rate study we are.
Yeah.
And their rates, ours and Batavia's are the lowest water rates in this area right now. Both of us are looking to increase our rates at the same time because of infrastructure improvements. They're slightly behind us in their rate study, but Brian, I don't think they're that far behind. I think they're getting close to finishing theirs as well.
Yeah, I think they've had a small increase this year, and then supposedly the next year or so it's going to be significantly higher.
Back to Trustee Curtis' comment, as far as like the $5 million to bring it in, can we have that, if the developer's interested in that property, hit them for a tap-on fee? I mean, yeah, I understand they're going to bring the pipe down for their own benefit, but can we charge them for some of that $5 million that we're bringing that water down?
the developer wouldn't be, in this scenario, there's no developer yet here.
Yeah, I understand.
So,
Understand.
I mean, they would still have to pay an impact fee to the village to tap on. We have a residential home impact fee. So any development that comes in would still be subject to
Well,
that.
I'm kind of thinking like out west when somebody actually paid for the pipe to go out and then people jumped on it, they had to kind of subsidize
recapture.
that build out. And it's like, is that something we can set up if somebody is interested to offset the $5 million?
I mean, it's an annexation agreement, so the village has every right to negotiate whatever it would like.
It may behoove us to consider that anyway.
Yeah. And at the time, yes, absolutely, you can negotiate that.
Yeah.
And I think the key is, for the board tonight, is to just assume that if that land never develops, you're eating either 5 million
Yeah.
or 23.5, just.
Understand.
Okay,
Quick question.
Yeah.
So we're talking 100 houses
roughly.
is all that it would take to like relieve the pressure for the rest of that area? So
That's,
if we remove 100 houses currently, the pressure would be fine everywhere else then?
No, there's another portion just south of Butterfield on the corner of Mitchell and Butterfield that was in that little graphic. That's
Right.
kind of affected by this also. And, I mean, removing the homes won't affect the pressure. It would be like having a different source to provide that pressure.
So again, just so I understand, so $5 million and only 100 houses are going to get that water?
correct, is it about 100, 200,
I think it's in
150?
that range, yeah.
It's a very small area.
Well, how have they been existing till today then? So the pressure drops occasionally or?
We've issued two, go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, so in the last couple of years, we started monitoring through some smart fire hydrants that the village invested in to keep tabs on these things. I think that we are at maybe number 4 for that area that's been affected by these pressure drops. One of the things that we're finding is related to a certain well shuts off and maybe kind of triggering some of this. We've also had some other, I don't know, unexplained pressure drops. It could be from somebody even stealing water from a fire hydrant could cause that kind of a thing. We can't track all that's everywhere. You know, that kind of thing does.
But it could have been
can
doing this
happen.
for the last 50 years. We have a reader now. Is it because we have a
Definitely, this
reader?
has been going on since it was constructed.
Yeah.
We know about it because of what we've
We have the
installed
reader,
to
that
monitor.
automatic reader that
Yeah.
lets you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's, if the board does not want to put forward any money towards this pressure area, you could, and it would just go on the way it's been going on now. As Adam alluded, we've issued a few boil orders recently.
Has there been complaints from the residents in that section, the low pressure? I mean,
Yeah,
a lot, or?
we get regular complaints, especially from the residents on Wingfoot. And it's usually for sure when there's a change in real estate, somebody moves in, and then, you know, we have to go out and explain to them what's going on.
I think we, at this point, I mean, the cat's out of the bag. We can't say, well, we know about it, we're not going to do anything about it, and then God forbid there's a fire or people are getting sick because of it, and we knew about it, now we have liability.
We need to do the pressure. We need to go with the Batavia Water program.
I agree.
It's a lot of money, but I will tell you this, it has changed the way we do operations there. So Adam's not even flushing hydrants in those areas because we're afraid of dropping the pressure.
Yeah, we're being very careful in that area with any kind of hydrant maintenance. It's just very sensitive, so we don't want to cause an unnecessary problem. We've also adjusted our operations. We're keeping our water towers much more full, so they're not getting the normal rotation we'd like to see, which can kind of affect water quality. You know, but we watch it closely, but we've done what we can to improve it for the short term.
And the
This is Hart
trustee-
Road on the
Go ahead.
east, and then what is the street on the west? That sort of, maybe it's not, I know it's probably not straight, but
Roughly just behind Pine Creek. So kind of like maybe some of Pinehurst, Woodlawn, Columbia Circle, Wingfoot.
okay.
Yeah.
Doral.
So how many homes on Mitchell? You said there's another area that's,
So, go
Yeah,
ahead, Adam.
It's that, the 7-Eleven strip mall area there, that's affected.
And Greencastle.
And then marginally Greencastle, we haven't included them in the boil orders we've issued because it's not clear enough that there's been an issue.
so it's
at-
more
at that-
commercial?
It's
Commercial?
more that
It's
commercial
that one strip center.
For sure, that commercial strip center and I think there's a Rogies daycare, or I might have changed names.
So there's
now,
nothing that
but
would help that particular area?
There is
Oh.
one hope to that, would be is if this pressure zone was created and future development came into Marmion and brought the water down all the way to 56, then we would have a connection right across the street from the other low pressure area. So that one's more predicated. It's millions of dollars to run that pipe all the way down to that strip center. So, but if a future developer comes in, it would actually help that situation. But without this pressure zone, future developments can't go forward either because we literally can't provide the water to that future development area.
We certainly don't want people getting sick and sending out boil orders. I don't think that's what we're about. I think we got to supply clean water to people, and then I say go with the Batavia water.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree also.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would like to just mention that the feedback we've gotten from the IEPA so far has been going this route is fine. We probably would have to do a corrosion control study for this exact zone because any change in source water requires that. And then we would also end up having to establish a new community water supply. So like North Aurora is its own community water supply. This would be like the North Aurora East community water supply or something like that. So we would have all the same requirements, monitoring requirements, reporting stuff would all be applied, but just for this zone.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks, Adam.
And then, so here, when we looked at the schedule that EI put together, and to remind you, that was that 121 to 141 million, we looked at taking a less aggressive approach to water main replacement. We already put the numbers in just for talking point tonight that the board might stay with HMO, which is that 12.5 versus 14 million. And then we put in the Batavia water portion at 5 million on the lower end, and that dropped it down to, $97 million worth of improvements. But we're looking at this thing, we said there's still a lot of unknowns, right? So you're looking at, for instance, I'll give you one right now, maintenance of 6 existing wells, $19.5 million. Well, the maintenance of the wells, each well gets pulled, the motor gets checked, rehabbed if it needs to, or a new motor gets put back in. They recommend every 7 years. Sometimes we'll stretch it to 10. But even if now it's $500,000 to pull one well, EEI did all 6 wells, and they did over that 25 period, how many would come up? Like some of these wells would have to be serviced 2-3 times in 25 years. And then they escalated it because the cost isn't going to stay the same for 25 years. So they assume a bigger number of $19.5 million, but it looks like it's out of whack, but it really isn't that far off of what it probably will be to maintain those wells. We ended up at 97 million, but we said things change. You don't know if we're going to get grants. You don't know if you're going to get IPA loans. What we do know is this. We know that there are things that are needed more in the first years, right in front of us, the 10-year plan, so to speak. So we took this plan and we said, what would be the things that we know has to get done? And this is the 10-year, $47 million option. And going through these real quick, this includes rehabbing both of our treatment plants, expanding them for the capacity of 3 wells at each treatment plant. We already decided on HMO. That's just general maintenance at 1.1 million for parts and whatnot, things that fail over time over at the treatment plants. The generator backups, right now, we have generators on only 2 of our 6 wells. We'd like to at least have 4 wells on generator, so that we can guarantee that we meet adequate daily supply in the summertime. There are times where you definitely need 2, if not 3 wells to keep up with capacity during peak hours in the summertime. Demolition of the existing water tower, which will take place once the new tower is fully up in service. That's obviously going to happen at some point. Then there's your maintenance of the wells. The maintenance of the 3 towers, that one seemed high at first until Adam and I talked about it a little bit more. When you paint a tower, the last tower we painted was almost $500,000 just to paint it. And that is doing some minor tweaking on the inside and painting the outer bowl and the stem. This includes, over the next 10 years, we're likely going to have to rehab the entire insides. Now, it's possible that we can get away with not having to do that upon inspection, but at some point, those towers are 40, 50 years old. They actually do need to be sanded down, and the inside needs to be completely stripped and then resealed and everything to get better longevity out of them. So maybe it's not 4.3, but we're pretty confident it's going to be a lot higher than it has been. I don't think have we ever done the East Side Tower on a full rehab?
No,
Yeah, and that tower is 50 years old.
73, yeah.
So, water main replacement at $12 million. If you think about it, it's really not that much. It's $1.2 million a year. That's in line with what it costs to replace a significant portion of water main each year. Corrosion control study is required by the IPA. The lead service line replacement is required in the next 10 to 15 years. We're starting that this year. And then the Batavia water portion, which, like I said, it sounds like the board has moved forward with that. We put it in at $5 million. So it gives you $46,550,000. With the next slide, please. So these are our current water rates. This is, we've always had significantly low water rates. Everybody here is in similar cycles. So when you look at towns like Yorkville, Montgomery, near the top, and Oswego is going to get there real quick. All three of them are switching to Lake Michigan water, so they're starting to see significant increases in their water cost. Geneva uses they use reverse osmosis for their water system. So they have a high maintenance cost for their water treatment plants. Aurora is obviously getting up there, and there we are at the bottom, and there Batavia is right next to us. And like I said, both Batavia and North Aurora are finishing their water rate studies at the same time. There was an article in the Daily Herald today about St. Charles significantly raising their water rates this year. So we know that that's on the schedule for St. Charles as well. That being said, 11,000 gallons is a typical bill. Now I can tell you, in my family, we use around 18,000 gallons because I'd like to say it's my kids' fault, but there's a lot of water usage at our house. But that's probably normal for a family of 5. So when you look at 11,000 gallons, you're really talking, that is the blending of families of 5, 6, 7, and single users. And ultimately, the average bill is about 11,000 gallons a month. Every 2 months. Next slide, please. So what we want to point out, and then Jason's going to take the scenarios and those frameworks we talked about. We want to assume that over 10 years, we have to take out $30 million in debt in order to pay for these improvements. The rest of that, $47 million, would come from water rates, basically the amount of water that revenue that we can generate already. We don't assume that we have no interest or low interest loans. That is a possibility. One town around us just got denied a no interest loan. Truth be told, if you might not get a no interest loan or a low interest loan from the IPA if your water system or your village is in good financial standing. So it's not always a guarantee. But if you get a low interest loan, it can be 1 or 2% versus 4%. So it has a significant borrowing rate difference. Right now, we have current debt on the books from a previous bond issuance of about $500,000 that is paid off with water rates. And we assume that in every framework here, we assume that amount also in the water bills until it falls off in 32. And once again, we have been very fortunate. We have received at times grants, but they're not guarantees. And we just received $1.1 million that we will put towards the water system. So that's a positive. With that, Jason's going to walk us through the 5 scenarios. And like I said before, I'm just reiterating one more time. Look at the numbers. The numbers are what Jason thinks are necessary to get us there in 10 years. But the frameworks are the most important aspect tonight.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll point out is that first bullet point is, regardless of whatever framework we did, I tried to make each one generate about the same amount of revenue, like for the total of 10 years, and basically whatever our reserve balances each year is kind of maintain an adequate reserve balance each year. So I tried to back into picking numbers that kind of made sure everything worked for those whole 10 years. So the first option we came up with would be raising the monthly base, the bi-monthly base. So currently it's $16. We raise it up to $47.25 every 2 months for the first 3,000 gallons billed. And then we also have increases to our water rate. So for the first year, we see a 20% increase. Basically, it kind of tapers down each year. But basically, we're increasing that heavy up front. You'll see that a lot in a lot of these options we do, basically because of this assumed debt payment, just to start generating money to pay for that new annual debt payment for the capital. But the thing with this one we're putting in there would be a senior discount, essentially. So the senior discount would make it for anybody who's 65 and over, their bi-monthly first 3,000 gallons would go from $16 to $25. So basically, if you're over 65, you're paying $25 the first 3,000 and then $7.14 per 1,000 gallons after that. If you're under 65, you're paying $47.25 for the first 3,000 gallons and then $7.14 everything after that. So currently, as we mentioned, our average bill for 11,000 gallons would be $63.60. That would go up under this scenario to $104.37 every other month. So basically a bi-monthly $40 or $20 per month increase.
One thing to point out too, when we showed our comparison of water bills, everything you saw there was apples to apples. So towns that use cubic feet measurements versus gallons like we do, it takes that into account at 11,000 gallons. It also takes into account that we have the first 3,000 gallons are included in your base charge. Some towns charge base charge, but then charge you for every 1,000 gallons you use after that. So that's important too, that let's say there are people, single people out there that only use 2,000 gallons of water. If their base charge would be $47.25 and that's all they would pay if they only use 2,000 gallons of water, there wouldn't be an additional charge beyond that.
All right, so the second option we looked at was essentially taking a higher base increase and then try to smooth out the actual water rate increase. So in this one, our normal annual or bi-monthly base would go from $16 to, in the first year, $65, but as we go on, that would go up to $75 for a few years and $80. This is anybody, including seniors, basically anybody who has a water account, commercial, senior, whatever, you'd go up to $65. We'd have our rate at a 10% increase, $655. That would change it to your $63.60 bill would go up $53.76 to $117.36 for the average bill. So, and this one, obviously you see in the option one where our actual water rate was $7.14. You're actually coming out with a lower bill at $104.37 versus when you put it all in the base charge here and kind of reduce the rate a little bit, you're actually paying more if you use our average 11,000 gallons. For option three, we kind of looked at the opposite. We're saying, all right, we're going to go from $16 to $25 for the bi-monthly base rate, but we're really going to put it in the actual usage rate. So in year one, we'd be looking at a 35% increase, going from $5.95 per 1,000 gallons up to $8.03. But if you look here, we go from $63.60 to $89.26. So it's actually lower, even though we have a higher $8.03 per 1,000 gallons, because we're reducing that and keeping that minimum charge, the charge that people have to pay to a minimum. We're only looking at a $25 bi-monthly increase, or about $12.50, $13 per every other month. On this one, there would obviously everybody would pay the $25 for the first 3,000, so there wouldn't be a senior rate, but obviously this would keep it in line with that option one where the seniors would pay the $25 for the first 3,000. In this one, everybody would pay that same rate.
Hey, Jason, I have
Yeah.
a question. So it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, option three would be reflective of actual consumption.
It would still include the
That's what I'm
first
looking at, because
3,000.
I think if you've got like a family of 5, obviously you'll
Yeah.
use more than a family of 2. So
Yeah.
which one would most accurately reflect, a usage fee?
I mean, I think that 11,000 is, as Steve mentioned earlier, is kind of it's the blended total of, I mean, we have a lot that only use 7, 8, 9,000. We have probably a lot that use, especially in the summertime when people are watering at that, probably 15, 16, 17,000. But 11 is kind of that, you taking seasonality out of it, blending it over a year, the highs and lows, like 11's a pretty good
But
estimate.
would that be option 3?
For what do you-
I'm just looking at the option 1, 2, or 3.
But
Which
there's
one?
5, isn't there?
There's 5
Yeah.
options.
Let's just let them finish, and then we'll decide and talk after that.
Yeah. And I've got something at the end that kind of puts it all together, hopefully. So option 4 is we would keep the base charge at $16. We're having increases, so we're starting with 10% increases and then working it down eventually. But we're taking a capital debt fee. So essentially what we did was we tried to figure out, we mentioned about a $1.9 million annual debt fee to take out that $30 million of debt and pay it back over 20 years. What does that come out to if we per account for an entire year? And that's an additional $50 per account for an entire year. So basically 6 bills for all the accounts would be enough money to raise to pay for just the new debt. So what that would do, obviously, is go take our bills from $63.60 to $118.36, or a $54 increase on a bi-monthly basis, assuming the $11,000. And then finally, the last option we did, and this is similar to a lot of other towns do, is we just said, there's no more first 3,000 gallons. Basically, you pay your base fee, and you get charged for every 1,000 gallons on top of that. So we took the minimum charge from $16 up to $34, increase, especially in the first year. The highest is 15%, so it would go from $595 to $684. It would take our bill from $63.60, assuming the average 11,000, up to $109.27 bi-monthly, or a $45.67 increase on a bi-monthly basis.
Trustee Curtis, to your question, option 3, which Jason's going to summarize in a second, but option 3 keeps the 3,000 gallon base charge, so anyone just pays the base charge if you use less than 3,000 gallons. But essentially,
Let me just say, I mean, we have 5 options to choose from. I mean, I would have liked to have seen this condensed to fewer options, honestly, because now I've got 5 different options that I can't see side by side. So for my brain, it's hard to kind of get this all in place.
Sure. To your point, option 5 is, I think, what you were getting at earlier. Option 5 is where everyone pays for every 1,000 gallons you use. So the people who use the most water would essentially be paying for every 1,000 gallons. Option 3 and 5 have a similar structure where the more you use, the more you pay, essentially.
So all the various options, and this is assuming the 11,000 billed bi-monthly, kind of here's what our assumed bills would be. The option 3, as we mentioned, which has the lowest base rate but the highest water rate, throughout the 10 years would basically have the lowest assumed bi-monthly water bill. You know, starting at $89.26, going down to $153.90, where everything else is kind of in that $170 range. We're about $20 cheaper, so on there, plus we're, you know, additional $20 cheaper, $15 cheaper on the front end.
I have a question. If these rates raise, will the water reclamation rates be commensurate and raised as well, or will they?
You're talking about
are
from
they
Fox Metro?
Yeah, are
I
they
mean, they're two separate, so yeah,
independent?
whatever they do is completely different than us.
Yeah.
And just to put that in perspective, my last bill was roughly from the village for water was around 115, and Fox Metro's was 156, I think. And I think Fox Metro's rates are going up again.
It's based on usage, right, with Fox Metro, though?
It's
Yeah,
just like
off the
yeah.
water?
Yeah.
It's whatever
Right, I know that.
the total amount you use.
So I got a question here. So this chart right here, you're saying that all 5 of these options end up raising the same amount of money. Is that
Yes.
correct? So, and maybe I'm just terribly confused, but option 3, every single number in that chart is lower on every line item than any other one of these? How is that raising the same amount of money?
Because the people
Because-
that use the most water are going to fill that gap.
Well, option 3 is my choice then, because
Option 3 for me too.
that looks like a no-brainer
Yeah.
to me.
How does that affect the businesses?
Option 3.
I mean, a lot of the businesses that are the high water users would just, that kind of makes the point, is they would make up any of the difference here, because, you know, the residential would have the lower because we use the less water, but then some of the high users in town would see more of an increase in their bills because they'd be paying those larger increases.
Since we're trying to get more businesses to come to North Aurora, is that a bad idea?
I honestly don't think so, just for the simple fact that we're already at the lowest of all the areas around us. In fact, when we had a manufacturer for food production come here, they were trying to leverage another town next to us, and they kept saying, oh, well, you know, maybe we should get incentives and things like that. And we're like, we're not offering incentives for your type of business. And they ended up coming back here anyways. They didn't end up building, but they decided to scrap the project. But they came back to us because the water rates were cheaper, and they needed lots of water.
You know, and I think as Steve had mentioned earlier too, is, you know, we were looking at a framework, and we could revise that a little bit too. And on this one, you know, I went with higher up front, 35, 20%, 20%.
Still the best one.
If we like the kind of keeping the lower base, but then the higher rate, maybe we can try to work a little bit to smooth it out, and maybe rather than a 35, 20, 20, maybe we kind of even that out a little bit just to kind of like ramp it up before we start going. So if this is kind of the way it goes, because just looking at the calculations we did, that's just the way to get to the lowest average kind of person's bill.
Jason, you want to show them the next slide?
Yeah. So here's where those, kind of that rate chart we showed earlier and how these 5 options kind of play into it. So options 2 and 4, 2 was the higher base, but then we have the lower usage rate, and then 4 was the capital fee. They're essentially the same. We're both had a $6.55 usage rate per thousand, and then $65 and $66 at $117, $118. That puts us basically the 5th out of the 10 shown here, including North Aurora. Options 1 and 5, 1 would be that senior rate, 5 would be the bill all the usage. That puts us at the 6th highest, and then that option 3 where we have the 25, we keep the lower, but then we increase, we put a lot of the increase into the water rate, puts us at the 8th, still just above Batavia and Sugar Grove, but as we mentioned, Batavia would be going up as well.
Can you tell me then, back to the senior rate, like,
There wouldn't be
what
one
would the
that says-
senior be paying at number 3 versus number 1?
So basically the same. So, well,
That's assuming,
we're
yeah.
So in the first one, anybody 65 and over is paying the $25.
And they are an
option
actual
3
senior. They show a certification that they're an actual senior.
Right.
Whereas option 3, we're assuming based on seniors that, you know, in the system that they use less water, but it's not a guarantee. A senior can use, they can water their lawn all summer. and
Or
it would
have
be
5
higher.
people living with them?
Yeah.
Yes, but so under option 3, if a senior were to use 3,000 or less, they'd be basically the same thing, the $25.
So just to clarify, all roads lead to the same destination.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, obviously we should go with option 3 because
Yeah.
there's not going to be a big
that's
sticker shock.
easy, no brainer.
Yeah, I mean, whatever.
Just let us show you
Took a
all the
while to
work
get
we
there,
did to get there. I mean,
Yeah, option.
We already concluded what we want.
I mean, internally, option 3 was kind of our recommended, our way to go to, would increasing the base charge from 16 to 25, and then the water rate. For the time being, we had 803, but we could go back and kind of work with it a little bit more. Some of the pros, obviously, it's the lowest calculated water bill for the average user, what we showed. The low bills, the people who are 3,000 or less, they have the least amount of increase, only going from $16 to $25 bi-monthly. The lower base rate, and then putting it all on the water user rate basically could help us with water conservation habits. So if you don't want to pay a lot of money for water, stop watering your grass or use less water, and that'll one way you can affect your bill. And then it's still one of the lowest calculated bills around all the communities around us. Obviously, the cons would be we do have a higher water rate. It's the highest one in all the years that we presented. It's very aggressive over the next few years. Yeah.
like there's one town on here that has an extremely low water rate, but they have an extremely high base charge. So everybody, no matter if you use 1,000 gallons or 5,000 gallons, you're hit with like a $75, $80 charge, and then cheap water after that.
Okay, any other questions? For Steve or
I
Steve,
know
any questions for us? Jason?
Yeah.
All right.
So I do have one quick thing. If you, at this point, what I need from the board is I can bring back the exact number 3 that Jason laid out today, or if you want to see number 3 in any other reiteration, we can bring it back on the 20th. So it's up to
We've
you.
seen 5. I think we're right.
Exact is good.
The way it is. Okay, then it'll come to the board on the night of the budget on the May 4th.
All right, thank you. So that concludes our discussion. I need a motion to adjourn and go to exec session
So
to
moved.
discuss sale of property.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. All right, thank you.